folks, this is a big update. I have a bunch of stuff to talk about. You might notice there's a whole bunch of car parts right here. There's my car. And actually, while we're over here, let me close this door really quick. While we're over here, I'll show you why I'm super excited and why I'm now updating this. I went and picked up my new engine, and I'm stoked. So, it's an S14, as you may be able to tell. I know I'm really close to it, but anyway, that's it. It's an SR, red top, from an S13. It's going over to my friend's place as soon as I can get it going. But along with the engine, I got all of this going on right here. There's a Mishimoto radiator. It's a Blitz intercooler. Trust intercooler with big AN lines on it. Downpipe, the blow-off valve right here. The intake, filter, mass airflow, various tubes and stuff. There's a catch can under there. This is a Walbro 255, gaskets and various, I have all kinds of just junk everywhere, screws and bolts and stuff. And here's a big wiring harness. This harness and all of this stuff was in an S13, so I have my work cut out for me to get this thing into an S14 now. If you know anything about the parts here and the engine, the way it's set up, it's got a whole bunch of stuff going on. Gritty intake, a bunch of Tomei parts, it's got the Tomei exhaust manifold, it's got a disco potato. It's, you know, it's well set up. I'm stoked. This is finally like the start of this car going fast, so I got a whole big jumbled puzzle to put together. Hopefully we can figure it out and we can go fast, and it's gonna be fun. Okay, today was day one working on the engine swap, and I'm just cleaning up. It doesn't look like all that much, I'll give you that, but we got the radiator gone. The wiring harness is right here, and it's mostly removed from the car. All of the lower harness is removed. I got the lines for the canister off of the throttle. I still have to figure out where these go, but they may not interfere with removing the engine right now. I mean, I think that's most of it. Tomorrow morning, I hope to put under a tree here. Tomorrow, I have to pull off the drive shaft, the exhaust, the tubing for the heater is still connected. I have to pull the ECU out and get the wiring harnesses out of the car. That's probably about it, man. I don't know. I think these cars, for some reason, look really mean without front bumpers. Just look at that. It just kind of looks badass. I want to go over a couple of things for anybody that may be interested in doing a swap similar to what I'm doing. Of course, my plan is to put an S13 red top SR into this car, and so what I need to do is figure out some wiring stuff. One of the main differences between the S13 and S14 wiring harnesses is that in the S14, the wipers are part of the engine harness. This is the wiper motor, and right under here, this black box is the wiper amplifier. So these two wires going to those two things are not in the S13 wiring harness, but you need them if you have an S14. You need those connections included in your harness, unless you don't want wipers, of course. But it's nice to have wipers, I'll be honest with you, you're gonna want them. I wanna sort of show you the deal inside. This right here should still be attached to the wall. This is the relay, the power relay for the ECU. So you need this in order to power the ECU, and this has this blue plug. So you're gonna need this blue plug in the S13 harness as well, unless you want to hardwire the ECU to just be on. This is the F3 plug, I think that's what it's called anyway. This thing is the key. This is the key to swapping an S13 into, or an S13 motor, an SR, for instance, into the S14, is this thing right here. This is the power for the entire harness. This is where all of your sensors and everything get their power from, and this connection does not exist in the S13, so this entire plug has to be included in the harness that you're swapping. I'm trying to sell this as a complete swap. I want to keep this harness together, and I have another harness that I bought for the purpose of cutting up. But this is the key. These two things, you kind of need them. I got to try and pull the entire thing out of the car. It is still in here. It is ready, though. I believe that I am 100% prepared to take this thing out of the car. The AC compressor is out, the lines are off of the power steering pump. I finally got the exhaust. You can see the exhaust is over here. I got the drive shaft out of the car. This is the, well, one of these is my new harness. This one here is the KA harness, lower engine harness. And I believe I'm going to buy a lower harness. There's 3 connectors right here that go to the fuse box in the engine bay. None of these exist on this one. So that means, yeah, it's it would be a lot of effort to get the thing swapped over to use this harness. They're only $100. And for $100, it is totally worth it to not have to deal with all that. I spent a lot of time underneath the damn thing. The exhaust flange is up there, so you can see it's nice and empty and clear. That's the back of the transmission right there. There's the diff back there, and yeah, so no exhaust under here, no drive shaft under here. It is 100% ready, including, this is my shifter right here. So there's the top of the transmission. Yeah, so there we go. That's it. It's ready. I can now undo the mounts, transmission and engine mounts, and the engine will come out of the car. I don't think it's going to happen today, unfortunately. Here we are at the end of, I don't know how many days now. I've been working on the swap and the engine is in the car. I have a big mess and it's getting pretty dark, so it's time to give up for the day. I just put the car back down on the ground. Here it is. I know it's getting dark already, but it's sitting in here. I got a lot to do. You can see all these plastic, or there's, you know, white bags covering a bunch of stuff. I decided before I stored the engine, I wanted to cover everything as much as I could, so I covered most of the inlets and outlets of the engine as much as I sort of thought was important to do. There was a tarp over it and everything, and you know, it's in a backyard in California, so you don't have to worry too much. So now it should only be maybe a few weeks, I hope, to get the engine running and drive the car. Someone just had an accident in front of my house. I'm just kind of laughing. There's just this little bumper tap happened in front of me. Oh man. Anyway, that's about it. I know it's getting super dark. Super quick update on the build. I am currently working on the wiring harness. As you can see, I got a bit of a mess going on here, but at this point I'm very close, I think, to having everything not soldered, but at least planned. Basically what I've done is as you can see here, I have like, these are wires that I'm going to splice together. I'm going to solder them together, of course. But at this point, I'm just planning out how all of the wires have to be run and where they go to. I'm looking at all of, there's tons of write-ups. That's actually one of the problems, is there's a number of different write-ups, and sometimes they don't exactly correspond, and it's a little odd. Sometimes it's a little tough to tell. I have wiring harness here on the table is almost complete. There's just a couple of things I need to sort of sort with that, but I don't think I'm quite ready for it in the car yet anyway. I also have, this is the lower harness right here. This is a speed sensor right here that is not the correct one. It doesn't fit in the car, so I have to get that sorted out. I actually have a different one on the way in the mail. Oil cooler here, I still haven't decided how I'm going to work with this. I kind of don't even think I need it, but I have it, and so I might sort it out. Over here, this is something I need to work on today. This is obviously radiator. I need to get some screws to hold this thing together, and at the bottom here there's yeah, brackets there. I got to bolt that together. But then that's done, and I just need to make some mounts for the top to bolt it into the car. Actually, I have the mounts. I just have to screw or drill some holes. Yeah. Right here is another project I'm working on today, and this is the throttle. You can see this is the throttle body outside of the car, and what I'm taking out here is a screw. Oh, this little guy, because it was missing one. Oh yeah, so that means this little screw, well, one just like it, went through the engine. Most likely, anyway. I can't. I haven't gone through any further investigation of this, but that's my assumption, is that there's a screw, much like this one, that went through the entire engine because there was one missing off of the throttle. That's not exactly a good sign. By now, it's probably too late, if that has happened. Oh, I still have my clutch line and everything here. I gotta figure that out too. Fuel pump, I gotta get that thing installed. I don't know if that'll happen today or anytime soon, but anyway. That's what we're doing inside. I'll go outside now and we'll catch up over there. I have a lot of things started, but I have almost nothing completed yet. So I'm hoping I can start to just button a few things down and get a few things sort of crossed off of the list today. Let me start inside here. So I grabbed a couple of screws. With the shifter here, you can see I'm missing a couple of bolts. I can see the tops of these ones, but you know, these two right here are missing. I'm also missing a couple right there. You can see I'm missing those, or that one. Anyway, so I gotta try and get that figured out on the inside. I have to make some kind of a gauge set up here because, well, this is all broken and shite anyway, but I'm gonna put some gauges right in here, so got to sort that thing out. See, I have the intake filter installed. I even have the overflow tank installed. The intake going into the turbo is pretty much complete, except for the fact that it's really wobbly. So I'm going to make some kind of a bracket to hold this thing up so it's a little bit more sturdy. I have the lines for the catch can, and the catch can is in here. It's kind of just sitting on the AC bracket, but it's not in its final location yet. But you can see I have the PCV, or you know, the crankcase lines are all on here. Turbo outlet, I've been working on trying to figure out how I'm going to get all the tubing done, and I can't really show you all that yet because I don't have the tubing with me. Throttle is obviously off of the intake manifold right now, and I got to just slap that thing back on. I don't know what to do about gasket. I hope the I hope the gasket that's on here can still work. Fuel. So fuel, this is my new fuel filter, the Z32 filter. So I've got lines going into the filter set up. Going out of the filter is still just sitting right here. I have to go underneath the intake manifold and that tube right there. Yeah, that's the fuel into the rail. So you can see that line comes up here, goes over here, so that goes into the rail right there. Fuel rail, and then exits out of the fuel rail. And I have this nifty, well, okay, this isn't exactly bracketed on right now, but I have this nifty 90 degree coming out of my FPR. Probably shouldn't have that restriction there, but probably just cover the mic. But you know, I kind of had to due to the position of where this mounts. But it looks kind of cool. I think it'll work. And then of course the line, this is actually going out of the FPR down to the tank, basically. So I have to get all that finished up. Okay, this is the battery box. I have to cut all this out, basically. You can see that it's all bent to hell. This used to be kind of like flat. It's not anymore because I was trying to rip it out by hand, and it's not going to happen. So I actually have a grinder I'm borrowing from a friend of mine, and I'm going to cut the hell out of this. All out of beer. Son of a diddly. Today, this arrived right here, which looks very reminiscent of this one without the gear on it. This is apparently the manual transmission version, and this is the automatic transmission version. Why it has the red gear, I do not know, because the automatic typically comes with like a peach colored gear or something. This one does not fit in a manual transmission, and this one does. I got this heater hose, so this part right here goes in a U shape. So it goes over and up and then comes out here, I have it connecting right here, and then this tube goes down to the bottom and into the heater core. This one here, this one here comes out of the heater core, and that is the throttle thingy for the heater. So first off, it kind of sucks that it's like interfering with this tube, but I don't see any way to get around that at this point. But anyway, all I need to do now is connect this one to a hose underneath this the intake manifold. And I bought some stuff and I've been trying to fiddle with it a lot. See, I have intercooler stuff sitting here again, and I'll show you why. Because I got a big hole. Yeah, that's a big hole. I cut this bad boy, giant friggin' hole over here, which is unnecessarily large. But you can see down there, the reason that I cut it so big is because this is the entire battery tray, and it was just rusted and disgusting and messy, and I tried to pull it out, and I think I showed earlier that it was all bent and stuff. Yeah, that thing's gone. I'm gonna, obviously, I need to run some tubing through here. The intake, from the intercooler is gonna go through this hole. I think I've made a decision as far as what I'm going to do with the front end of the car here. I really hope it's the right decision because it's going to be a kind of big deal. Here's the front end, and this is the intercooler I have. And I'm going to chop these off, basically flush with that lower channel. I'm also going to chop these off somewhere, you know, up here, basically, all three of these posts, so that the intercooler can sit right up against, basically up against the lower tube there, or lower channel or bracket, or whatever you want to call it. By doing this, of course, I'm going to have to find a way to support all of the upper rad because these posts will be gone. Okay folks, well today is tomorrow and I have done it. I thought about it for about a day and decided it's time to do it. So what you see here is the end of the frame, and here's a chunk that came off of this side, and I actually cut a little more out here just to try and get some more clearance. I may still have to do a little more cutting because what you can see here, this is a little makeshift bracket that I'm going to use to mount the intercooler. I plan to make a better mounting system later. I just need to get everything in place so I can get all the pipes set up, and eventually I'm going to re-brace all of this so that the intercooler, well, the intercooler will be mounted. The intercooler will be mounted correctly and not with this chintzy little like bracket thing, as well as I'll box off the ends of these frame rails that I cut off, and we'll make new uprights that support the radiator. You can, or the whole radiator support is kind of flimsy now, but that'll be fixed. I'll figure all that out later, but for now I just need to get the intercooler installed so I can get all the piping cut. Of course, that means I'm modifying my car to fit in this specific intercooler, but I think in the end what it does is it sits the radiator where, man, I don't know why I keep saying it, intercooler where I want it to be. And if I'm to go to a different intercooler, I still have this clearance, so I can still place the intercooler up here with, essentially what I want is the bottom of the intercooler to not be much lower than this right here. And a lot of people end up mounting it really far away from the rad support and really far down, and I don't like that. I want it to be tighter and closer, and it'll be less visible, and it'll be out of the way from getting hit from stuff underneath, and it's just going to be, in my opinion, a better mounting position. A lot of the work I've done today you can't really see, but I had the grinder here, had some cut-off discs going, and if you look under behind the intercooler here, this is the frame rails. I've talked about them in another video. I cut more of them off. They're like flush now with the, yeah, you can't really see it, with that black cross-member beam thing at the front of the car. So they're cut flush. I had to cut a little bit more off of these headlight supports and the trunk, or hood latch. So the intercooler is sitting in here where I want it, officially. Like, this is pretty much it. This is golden, dandy right here. I'm still probably going to have to cut a little bit out of the bumper, but much better than actually removing the bumper support or anything like that. So what I'm doing is setting up what I need for the piping the intercooler piping. This is actually cut right here. I've been setting this this one here. I think this is how it's gonna look. It's gonna be kind of coming on a backwards angle coming up into here. Up here, I'll have a connection right at that sheet metal, which is really not ideal because that sheet metal could probably cut into the silicone there. Anyway, I really needed the BOV to sit like right where it is, right here, because it's going to be in between where I have the filter mounted, which is this sort of mangled looking piece of metal, and this right here, which is the that's the air conditioning tube thing going into the AC condenser. So this thing's got to kind of float in midair right here. And then this pipe's going to come up and over the intake, or the, you know, the inlet to the turbo. And it'll go kind of over and into this. So that's my plan there. On the opposite side, on the cold side of the intercooler, I have this piece. It's cut to where I need. And this piece is going to go here, and, you know, kind of like that. Not exactly, but you get the idea. It's marked there where it's got to be welded and such. It's not ideal because when I measured all of this out, the fitting up there was kind of loose and dangling a little bit, so it's not exactly perfect, but I think it's pretty darn close anyway. I'm working on the car a little bit during the week right now just because I really want to get some stuff done. I don't remember when I last made a video. Can't remember what all I've covered. I think the radiator wasn't in the last time, and so you can see it sits in there. The radiator has given me a really good indication as to how straight the front end of my frame is. If you can see, there's like a, you know, a pretty sizable gap right here, and over here it is fine. So yeah, that's not ideal, unfortunately, but that's the radiator. That's how it's going to sit, kind of roughly. I'm going to put at least one of these brackets. I'm going to move it over and put it on here, and then for now I might not even hold this side, and then I don't know, I might try and come up with a way to bend. I think this side of the core support has to come forward. I don't know, it's hard to tell. This side definitely had an accident on it at some point, so I think that's why it's so bent. Today, what I'm working on, and almost done, getting real close, almost done, the intercooler piping. That's how it sits. So what we did, I had my friend Marcel at work help me out and weld these brackets. There's just one on either side. They go to this M6 bolt here that's in the bottom of the rad support. So that's like your tension rod bracket, and so that's where the bolt is for that, and this side here. So that's how it sits. It's got these TIG welded brackets. Not the prettiest design or anything. They're just really simple. And of course at some point I will mount, there's a screw hole on the top. I will mount it. You can see there's a little bit of a wiggle, but not much. They're pretty solid 1/4 inch thick aluminum on the bottom. So this side of the piping is pretty much complete. So obviously intake, there's the intake, throttle and everything. That big pipe goes down here where I've cut this giant freaking hole. And then it connects here to a lower pipe, and I'm stepping on a screw. Okay. I guess you get a good idea there of where the intercooler sits. Pretty gnarly. Looks good. This is probably 2.75 because I know it comes down to 2 inch. This is a 2 inch pipe up at the top. And this one and this one must both be like 2.75-ish. This one here must be 3 or maybe 3.5 or 4. I don't know. That's 3 inches, I think. Okay, so the only thing that's not finished here, you can see it connects and kind of goes in through that hole that was already there. Comes up, and here's the blow-off valve, which is jammed between my really skookum mount bracket here and the that's the AC line, so that green cap right there is actually like touching where it sits, but this is not complete. You can see up here. Wow, that was a beautiful Civic that drove by. Up here, so this is the last part to complete as far as welding, finishing up these welds and stuff. So you can see This part is not attached, that's just taped on. So we'll have to weld that one in and weld this one together. I had them tack this end. It's actually got a rolled bead end with a bit of an angle on it, and so that's how it's gonna fit eventually. So that's kind of a long view. It's not ideal, unfortunately, due to the shape of some of the stuff going on here. It's an S13 kit that I'm modifying to fit in my S14. You can see it has to kind of snake around the intake filter, and then there's kind of this big gap right here that, you know, it's probably not the perfect way to do it, but I didn't want to mess around with this pipe any more than I had to, because it's got the BOV on it and all that, and I just didn't want to bother with it. So this last part kind of has to hump over top of the intake tube, the intake to the inlet of the turbo, and the outlet of the turbo obviously right here is a 2-inch to this one. So anyway, I'm gonna mark this one, and I'll bring that stuff to get Marcel to tack for me, and then once I test fit it, we will finalize welding on that, and then it's done. This is the fuel system, of course. What you can see is this is the fuel filter, so there's a line coming up from the bottom of that filter going in. This is a Z32 fuel filter, so it's kind of bigger than the standard one anyway. That line kind of snakes underneath the intake manifold and into this shiny chrome looking line. That line goes to a soft line, so that's the inlet to the fuel rail. Obviously the fuel rail, injectors, outlet of the fuel rail, and we're not in focus here, okay. Outlet of fuel rail, and of course there's the FPR, so this is a SARD FPR, and you can see that's where the gauge sits. Oh, you might be looking at my beautiful throttle mount here. Not exactly my proudest invention, I will admit. This I really don't like, and I really don't even want to use it, and I'm not decided if I will use it or not, but for now it's in here, and it's actually fairly sturdy. It's not 100% sturdy, but it's there. It would probably work, to be honest. What was on here before was horrendous. It was a little bent, broken, rusted piece of steel, and I definitely think this is superior to that, even though this looks like garbage. I would definitely recommend having something better than this. I'm gonna think about that a little bit more, and maybe if it drives with this, I'll drive it to work or something, and I can try to fabricate a better mount. That's what a lot of stuff is going to happen here, is I'm going to have to kind of leave it until I have a chance to drive my car somewhere that I can do actual fabrication stuff, because unfortunately I have absolutely no capabilities. I'm sitting in my driveway with like a block of wood as my bench to cut stuff. Like, I was cutting a lot of different tubing, and you can see how gnarly this, well, maybe you can't really see, but this connection is super messy. Because, well, I had to do it holding this pipe by hand and a hacksaw on the other hand, and it's just, yeah. So I got some new lines here. These are actually OEM lines from the power steering reservoir. So you can see that shiny one, that's a shiny new line right there, and that's a shiny new line too. They were leaking all over the place, and one of them was actually ripped, so I replaced them. I replaced the crush washers in the banjo here for the power steering pump, so that thing's tightened down. That's all skookum. Here's another one of the little intricacies of doing this swap. This is an S13 radiator, and of course on the S13 your radiator reservoir is over here somewhere, or up here. I don't know, it's over here. Anyway, there it is on the S14, so I have to run this line all the way back to there. So this is the original line for mine. This one's probably too short. The catch cans. So that's the crankcase vent. This is the crankcase ventilation tube coming up here, goes to a T, and comes down here. You can see this is the actual kind of vacuum side of the equation. This goes into the turbo inlet on this tube here, and they both come back to the catch can. Now, the catch can would have been in the S13 mounted like roughly here somewhere, but as you can see, this is a bit of a congested area in my car. We've got a radiator line right here. I've got an AC line right here. I've got the blow-off valve and this intake, or the hot tube here. And yeah, and the filter, of course. And I mean, there's even more AC stuff going on. I don't have the AC compressor in here, which in itself is going to be quite interesting because I have to do a lot of shit. Anyway, so I think what I'm going to do with this thing, not decided 100% yet, but I think I'm going to have to lengthen these lines a little bit. The lines are just not going to reach far enough. And I think I'm going to mount the damn thing like way down here somewhere. It's got to be maybe on the frame rail here or maybe up here somewhere. The wiring's the next thing, and it's kind of the last thing. So I have my Wiring Specialties lower harness in here, almost entirely installed. I had to do some gimmicky stuff with the alternator connector there, but it's on right now. I don't know if this is the best way to route the damn thing. You can see this is the rear seat pulled up. I got a bunch of the interior pulled apart, and basically I'm routing a battery cable. This is the cable right here. It's going underneath the carpet on that side. It's going to go behind that panel. This panel right here where the rear kind of armrest is, and it's going to go up and through a hole over there, and then the battery is going to sit in the far side of the trunk. We are real close to this car running. So, man, I've done a whole lot in the last little while, and I don't know how much of it I've gotten on video. You can see my final, this is my last intercooler pipe, that's all finished up. So the intercooler piping is all done. You can see the intercooler is mounted up here. It's got these brackets, that's cool. Coolant lines, all of the radiator lines are all hooked up. I got this big long looping one coming over here and all the way to the reservoir. Got a new ground for the MAF. Set up the ground back here, so that's grounded. I made a big grounding wire. You probably won't be able to see it, but back there, that's the main engine ground. That big brass one goes down to the frame on the bottom. And that's also where I have a few other things grounded. You can see this is the ground, this black one here for the ignition. And the other chassis, or engine grounds are there. I have another ground here for the lower harness. This right here is my sock of doom. This sock is, of course, covering up my positive leads. So the engine's actually hot right now. I have the battery hooked up, but you can see this is my contraption for hot. It's actually got, oh boy, I gotta be careful with this. It's actually got this little aluminum piece that I made. I threaded a little piece of aluminum, turned it down to size, and that's my my post in the engine bay. Engine harness is all pretty much hooked up. You can see this is there's my coolant, temperature sensors. This is throttle position sensor, cam angle sensor. Got back here, we got the MAF, or not MAF, knock sensor, and IACV, I guess. I don't have the wiper stuff hooked up. I had it all soldered in, but then it turns out that all of my lines were way too short. All of the wiring I did was too short, so it wasn't gonna fit. The rest of the exhaust is in the car, so you can see there's the muffler exhaust all the way hooked up. Here's my battery. So again, another sock right here is my inline breaker for the battery. Hot side, negative ground. I made this bracketry here, and that's where my ground is hooked up to this. So I removed a bunch of paint. Removed a bunch of paint on the chassis here and hooked up made these brackets. The brackets are, of course, to hold the battery in. So that's pretty cool. Again, temporary. I have some other plans for that in the future, but it's going to be good enough for now. I had to get this sensing line. So there's this vac line that goes to the wastegate, as well as here's where my catch can's sitting. The catch can is not permanently mounted here. It's just got a single kind of nut down there holding it in on this little bracket thing. It's not right. This is kind of temporary too. I had to get the vac line for the FPR. That one's in. This is it here. I have to set the FPR, so I'm going to do that without vac. Zip tied the hell out of this relay box, so it's not going to move anywhere. For now, my you can see the ignition is just kind of chilling here. I'm gonna have to tie it somewhere for the time being, but I will eventually mount it, and I think I might end up mounting it inside. I'm not certain on that. On the inside, huge mess inside, but I got some of the interiors put back together. This is still kind of hanging out, but that's where my wire is run, back behind here and under the carpet. There's the ECU, a mess of wires. Yeah, got the F3 plug in the you know, socket thing. I got my shifter mounted and everything, and I even filled it with fluid, of course. Oh, I set up this oil pressure gauge. It's not mounted, obviously, but I have this sensing line. It's a mechanical gauge, so it's actually a tube going from here to a connection on the side near my oil filter. I think I'll be able to start the engine in the next hour or so. I just have to fill oil and coolant and see how much of it pours out onto the ground. And then I'll start it up and hopefully get video of startup, because that would be awesome. I'm gonna preface this by saying I have absolutely no idea what's going to happen. I'm kind of just searching around for any leaks and stuff. I don't see anything leaking out or anything right now. I've got about a gallon of water in it and 4 liters or so of oil. This is absolutely, no joke, absolutely the first time that I'm going to attempt to do this. Let's see, I have a clock, so, oh, I have a beep, and lights. So obviously I've got power. The clutch is not hooked up. Or, okay, it's hooked up, but I don't have any fluid in it, so I'm in neutral, and that's all I can really do. Oh boy. Okay, let's see what happens. Whoa! It's running! It's running! What? How is this possible? I've got oil pressure at 79 or 75 or whatever. It's not idling super good, but it's idling. I got oil pressure. Wow. I'm not sure the throttle linkage is all that accurate, because I think it might be holding the throttle open a little bit. Wow, it's running. This is crazy. Wow. Nothing pouring out so far. Okay. Oh, except there's a lot of smoke right here. I don't know where it's coming from. I better shut it off. Wow. Well, it was running.